What's going on, Vigilante World? It's your guy SPEC Civilian, and we are back with another video. First things first, I want to give a shout out to all my viewers, subscribers, and patron supporters for making this a home to catch some content before you make a purchase. Much gratitude to BCA for sponsoring the channel, allowing me a chance to feed my farms to bring you content. Be sure to click on the link in the description and use the channel code to rack up some rounds. Today, I'm bringing you another episode of 75 Live. In today's video, we're going to be diving into the CZ P-01 and the CZ P-10C. Now, both these pistols are really good because they're compact pistols that anybody can carry, but also they're not super expensive. One thing I really want to highlight about these two is that how they're similar in a generation of ergonomics that really kind of makes them more the same than they are different. And honestly, for the 75 compact line, it was the OG crossover style for anyone that was out there looking for something that was a little bit different, definitely at the time from like a Beretta. And now being able to have something like the P-10C, which is kind of like the mock of the Glock, really gives people another gun that can truly be just as reliable as the other ones that people were expecting to have. And that's really what we're going to get into today. So let's get into it. All right, Vigilante World, let me show you just how similar these two pistols are. So here we have my CZ P-01 Omega, and here we have my CZ P-10C. Now real quick, safety check. All right, since we have the CZ P-01 Omega, we're gonna go ahead and start here because this is truly the OG to all of the 75 compact models, and honestly how they got into the designs, because this truly kind of holds everything that, you know, kind of spits out from CZ as far as a carry gun. So just want to kind of go over how these two specifically are truly kind of more similar. And what I mean by that is more ergonomic, but real quick, let's just jump straight into the top. We have the sights over here that are going to be irons, and they never dropped an actual optic ready version. And that was the only thing about this gun. They originally had dropped like a tactical version, which was amazing, like a suppressor ready version, which is super solid too. I think this gun as it is definitely should have deserved some type of optic ready model. And honestly, to see, you know, we're jumping into this new year and we haven't had nothing like that at all, and honestly probably won't see nothing like that, is kind of like, you know, sad for the P-01. The best thing about it is that you do have a market out there that allows you to work that out if that's something that you want to do. That's kind of the best thing about the actual P-10C though. This does come optic ready, and the thing about that is with this having such a similar design to the overall 75 line, the compact line, this was just the iteration that they had released, you know, to kind of compete with the Glock models. And honestly, they did it very, very well. But if you do look at the guns, whenever you're looking at them, they're very similar in overall style. Whenever you're looking at the silhouette, they're very similar if you look at how the overall curvature of the back strap kind of sits in the hand. So this one, whenever I'm gripping it, you see it snaps right in the curve of my hand. Same as this one, snaps right in the curve of my hand. And that's what I mean by them being a little bit more similar in the ergonomics of it. If you look at how the slide sits on the overall P-10C, as you can see, it's a bit taller of a slide. It is a bit, you know, thicker of a slide. The P-01s, you know, were always getting gripe because people were talking about how they couldn't get to the serrations. Now, of course, if you train with that, you definitely can get by all of that. But one thing that I like about the P-10 is that it really kind of embodies that same kind of feel in a little bit more of a thicker slide. Now, you really feel that whenever you're actually racking the slide, because as you can see where my hands line up, as you can see, there's a little bit more slide, but where I'm kind of racking the slide in general is where I'm kind of training at. And it's the same for the overall P-01 right here. Now, of course, I don't have more slide, but I don't need more slide because, again, it's the same exact position whenever I'm actually using the function of the gun. And so that's one thing that I want to say is a little bit similar as well, outside of not being able to have an optic on a gun like this. Now, having the optic on this makes it so much better, of course, and honestly makes it the gun that everything you needed from the P-01. And I think that's why the P-01 probably won't see much more days in kind of innovation and stuff like that, because they have something like this that you can put an optic on that allows you to be able to still have all of the kind of new generation factors and variables that lead into, you know, making it whatever you need, but also allowing you to maintain a gun that is striker fired outside of having a double action, single action gun. Of course, that is the biggest thing that you're going to get as a difference anyways in the overall functionality of the gun. This being double action, single action allows you to get really cool things like a decocker. Decockers are super amazing. That's honestly one reason that the P-01 is always going to be an amazing pistol that people are going to, praise, because it had what a lot of people needed in a compact gun. Definitely to be safe. Regardless, it does not need an optic. With the P-10C, I'm not going to say it doesn't need an optic, but whenever you do have an optic on it, it does make the gun much more fun. Without an optic, it's actually very, very fun as well. Just knowing that you have the option to really put an optic on here is what really gives this an up over the overall side acquisition on this, because they present the same since they do feel the same. So that's kind of one thing that you will see again as a similarity when you get into the actual functions of it. One thing that I do appreciate about the P-01 is that you do still get the top slide serration. So whenever you're picking up that front dot, it's so easy. But also, you guys know I definitely train fibers, and so I do have that black serrated rear that makes it a little bit easier as well. But that's one thing about the slide that you get right out of the box that I know for a fact does actually add a little bit more of a perk than the P-10C. Though whenever you do have the P-10C, of course, you get that super nice tri-top slide, but you don't get that same exact setup and being able to acquire the sights right out of the box. Of course, you can always make some stuff happen, and if you do have some fiber optic front sights, then you can definitely still have a sight that makes it very easy for you to acquire. That's one thing that I can say about the P-01 that I do appreciate more than just having a tri-top slide with a very nice finish on it. Now, the P-01 has a little bit shorter than a 4-inch barrel on this thing. You do get a super nice accurate shot between self-defense and long distance shots. Anyone can appreciate about the P-01, because regardless of the barrel length and even the size of this compact pistol, you can definitely still get some very, very accurate shots regardless of the slide length and regardless of the barrel length. How smooth this gun is whenever you're actually firing it, anyone could put their hands on a gun like this and make sure that they can get some consistent shots. But that's one thing about the P-01 that is to appreciate for sure. Getting into the P-10C, you do have a little bit longer of a barrel, so that's one thing to appreciate as well, is that you do get a little bit more because it is pretty much a 4-inch barrel, to make sure that again people could have something that was comparable to a Glock. You do get that same type of feel whenever you're actually even using this gun. You do get that Glock 19-esque feel, and that's one thing that at least makes me comfortable. Glock 19 was one of my very first guns, honestly the very first gun that I purchased. It really kind of gives me all these similarities out of the P-01 that I like, and puts it in a platform that is just very comfortable and very simple for me to operate. One thing that I can say is that I also don't have to worry about the hammer. I don't have to worry about the decocker. It's just again a very simple setup for me to just draw and really just kind of use. As we get on down to the frame, they both do have accessory rails, so you're not gonna have to worry about losing that with either one. But one thing about the 75 compact model is that it was one thing to appreciate with not having any optic option. For a fact, you can still defend yourself a little bit better if you did need to blind someone in order to make sure you could defend yourself. And so with the P-10C, I know it does have an optic and it does have the accessory rail, but that's more of a new generation thing over a classic thing that's still giving somebody an option to be able to defend themselves. So that's one thing for the P-01 I definitely just want to highlight, outside of just having, any perk that you need out of a new generation gun. Now, the texture on the P-01 is super nice, definitely with having whatever grips that you need. You do only get a couple serrations on the back strap and a couple serrations on the front strap. Compared to the P-10C, is a big different ball game, because it gives you some bite on the front, it gives you some bite on the back, and it gives you a little bit of bite on the sides. It doesn't actually scratch you or anything like that as well, so it's super smooth to carry if anybody needs to. So they did really well with honestly being able to update the generation in ergonomics, but still being able to match the new generation texture. So that's one thing out of the P-10C I definitely still want to highlight and actually give a perk to, because it is something that is a little bit better when you're getting comfortable drawing this gun. It makes it easier and easier to really just kind of know where you are. And again, since it's a little bit more simple and even has a little bit of texture on the frame, it makes it that much easier to know where your hands are when you're drawing the gun. With having those internal slide rails, it just allows you to be able to know exactly where your thumb needs to be at, but it doesn't have the same memory notch. It trains the same, but the texture does help a little bit more. So again, with the P-10C, it does have a little bit more of an edge on it whenever you're thinking about making that purchase or even drawing the gun. Now the P-01 does have a solid 15 round mag, but also the P-10C has a solid 15 round mag. So you're not gonna have to worry about that. But between the two mags, they are not compatible because as you can see, this one is a little bit thicker than this one. And so they do not feed to each other. Full size variants of either one of these models, those mags will be compatible with the compact model. So just keep that in mind if you're ever thinking about using other mags inside these guns. Now the slide release on the P-01 is a little bit easier to get to whenever you're actually throwing the mag in and actually dropping the slide, just because you have all this surface to really know after you actually have the slide locked back. Once you throw the mag in there, you can easily just drop this to run some rounds. With having the P-10, this is really nice to carry, and it actually has, you know, some solid serrations for a little bit of texture. But whenever you actually send this thing back and you're reloading your round, right? If you're reloading your round and you're looking for this, it's a little bit different than having all of this surface. So that's kind of the main thing about having a little bit slimmer of a slide release. It works well to get to with one hand. So that's one thing that's a perk for the P-10C, is that you don't have to worry about loading your mag in and dropping it with the other hand. It's easier if you do want to be faster with making sure to load a round in and get to it with the other hand so your grip can be in line for the next round. That does make a difference in when you're actually functioning the gun. Now with the triggers, of course, you know, with having a double action, single action trigger and having a decocker on here, it's so smooth to just be able to do that and know for a fact you're safe. So that's one thing that's, again, really nice about the P-01. That super solid roller in here allows you to be able to get a super smooth double action shot. Resetting that gun, that's your reset. And then this is more of your wall, and it is a rolling break, and it's not too sharp of a wall. It's actually just really smooth. Get to this really smooth wall and you really just let it go. But also when you get back to it, as you've seen, it's super short, and you do have to actually give it like, you know, a half a mil or so before you get right back to the wall. And it's not, again, a crazy definitive wall. It's a very smooth wall. But whenever you get there, it's easy to let go. And it's only probably about 2.5 pounds or so. So one thing that I can say is it's very safe, because whenever you do have the double action, you can actually put it right back into that double action mode, and it gives you a solid, you know, 5-pound trigger or so. Now the P-10C, now this is something that's totally different. Whenever you have something like this that's a striker fired gun, of course, you know, it's pretty much double action only. Having a striker fired gun allows you to be able to get a really crispy wall whenever you're resetting these guns. So as you've seen, this is your take up here, really short take up, right? And then you can just let it go, right? Whenever you're actually resetting that thing, look at that. There is no other take up or stack or anything like that to get back to this very definitive wall, just to let it go again. So that's one thing that's a little bit better about how this gun is set up. Also, one thing I want to highlight is that how you see this gun right here, once you reset it, you see how your wall is about at a 95-degree angle or a 100-degree angle, and then you actually break and it's about a 95 or 100-degree angle. However, vice versa you want to see it. Degrees between that break is so short that allows this to be so crispy. And so again, whenever you're looking at how this gun resets and allows you to get right back to it, it allows you to be so fast and making sure, again, you can get those next rounds off. Whenever you do have that P-01, it's just a little bit different, because again, whenever you're thinking about, again, this is your main take up, but even then, let's let it go. This is your reset, right? You see how you're already about 120 degrees into this actual trigger, and then you let it go at about 125 degrees. You're so deep into the trigger that it's just a little bit different whenever you're drawing the gun and actually getting off those rounds. So again, I'm just trying to highlight these things for anybody who wanted to understand how these triggers work a little bit more, so you can understand why these little bit differences kind of aid in the shot and performance. Super nice for either gun. And that's one thing that's to appreciate about this gun. This thing definitely has like a Shadow 2 trigger for a double action, single action gun that's compact. Definitely before like the Shadow 2 compact came out, this is definitely something to highlight. But having a striker fire gun that can be up to par and kind of feel more like a 2011 trigger is something to very much so appreciate out of the P-10C. So that's one thing about both of those guns that I just want to just address for anybody that needs to know how these guns really work internally. They really are more alike than they are different, but the functionality that you get out of either one does make it super nice to have a shooting experience for either gun. You just have to train around them, and that's what we're going to get into just here in a second. So let's get off the mat. Let's talk about it.
Back to it. So as you've seen, both of these guns are super amazing and have a lot to offer in being able to make sure you have a super clean shooting gun, but also have all the details that you need to make sure the gun can just function as needed. The P-10 does kind of approach things more in a modern fashion, and the 75 definitely approaches things more in that classic fashion. And that's just the reality of how the guns are made and honestly how they were delivered to the market, and I think they both do very well.
These guns truly are the reflection of the same generation, with having that classic ergonomic, but having all of the newer things that can, amount to something that is up to par with more of the modern guns. And that's one of the best things about approaching something like a P-10C and even having a P-01, because the P-01 was definitely ahead of its time. In hand, that P-01, again, anybody who ever puts one of these in their hand will see it is super comfortable. But that P-10C is ridiculous because, again, it takes that same level of ergonomics, but also uses newer innovation to be able to have a better grip, the same comfort in your hand, but also allowing you to be able to not have to worry about chafing up your fingers if you are using some type of striker fire gun. What's really good about the beaver tail on the P-10C is that it makes sure to keep the hands safe. So outside of the grip being super comfortable, it can make sure that you're not worried about anything, or you're not worried about messing yourself up while shooting the gun.
Though the P-01 has an aluminum frame, it 100% is still a light enough gun to carry and make sure that you can defend yourself and draw super quick and know everything will happen as needed. But that's the best thing about the P-10C as well, is an homage to the P-01, and it does everything in a more modern fashion. If you do truly like all of the stuff in the P-01, the P-10 is going to offer the same things but give you that next level of, honestly, modularity. You're able to change out the back straps, get so much more texture on the front strap. It gives you so much more in comfort in just drawing the gun. Not only that, with it being polymer, it's so much lighter. So if anyone really needed to have it on them, it's not uncomfortable. It feels more like a Glock 43 or CZ P-10M if you're carrying it on your person. If you're drawing it, it feels like a full-size gun. And that's kind of the best thing about the P-10C. You're not losing any of that and making sure that you can have a gun that is up to par with, again, everything that's out here that is modern, but also gives you those classic feels and making sure that it can be comfortable to overall draw and make sure that you can grab your sights and get active. Now, both of these guns perform super spectacular, and I can't complain about either one. The P-01 is still an amazing gun, even if it is not optic ready. The sight acquisition on the gun is so solid because, again, the ergonomics are super solid. So when you're putting the gun in your hand and you're drawing, it makes it easy to just point the gun, but also pick up the sights. Y'all know that I train fibers, so I see that fiber super nice, and with the trigger being so smooth, it allows you to truly get those shots off as smooth as possible on first shot. The P-10C, again, having that same level of ergonomic is the same. You're not losing anything. If anything, if you were training with a P-01, you've trained yourself to make sure that the P-10C draw is so amazing because, again, you get that next level of comfort, you get a little bit more grip, and the sight acquisition is exactly the same. And again, I have fibers on that one as well, so I pick up the sights exactly the same, but with it having an optic, it truly just changes the game and allows you to be that much faster and, honestly, that much more accurate. Of course, running self-defense trials, I was able to go ahead and send the target back about 10 yards and be able to get some solid groups with both guns. The P-01 was super easy, and again, with it being a classic gun, it shoots and allows you to not want an optic because it is so point of aim that you don't need that. So if you're really wanting a gun that you can train around irons, the P-01 is so perfect. But I know for a fact, if you throw an optic on that thing, it is truly going to be that much better. With the P-10, having an optic on it or not having an optic on it, it still allows you to have an amazing self-defense group, and truly being able to have a really clean trigger allows you to not have to worry about slopping all your shots. So that's kind of the best thing about truly being able to have that more modern update, and know for a fact, again, you can have a little bit more comfort in gripping the gun, having the same sight acquisition, but truly being able to let those shots go and have a really nice group at self-defense. Now, with long distance trials, wild enough, the P-01 had an amazing group. The group was a bit tighter than the P-10. That is just a testament to how well the P-01 shoots. And again, when I say the gun shoots like it doesn't want you to have an optic, it truly does, because if anyone is training, you can always make sure you hit more shots. Me personally, I was only able to hit about half of the shots. It's super solid for me still, because as long as I'm hitting most of my shots at a long distance like that, I know for a fact I can still hit and train around all of those things. So that's nothing that I'm really worried about. It does highlight the fact that whenever you do have an aluminum frame gun, that classic kind of setup, that you don't have to worry about all the other other perks that go into just being more accurate. Now the P-10, definitely with it still having an optic, still was so easy to pick up the sights and still be able to get the shots downrange and honestly hit a little bit more shots. The group spread just was not as tight, pretty central, and that's kind of one thing that's really good to highlight about how the optic does work with the overall gun. It does still show you how, regardless, whenever you have that classic setup and you can kind of calm yourself and still shoot, you can be just as accurate with no optic. With the optic, it just shows you that you can easily pick up the sights super fast, get those shots off, and know for a fact you can hit anyways. Whether you have an optic or not, the P-01 shoots so great without an optic. If you were to even get it built for an optic, yourself is gonna love this gun, just like any other gun that doesn't have an optic and you throw an optic on. That being said, the trigger on the P-01 is still super sweet. The little Shadow before the Shadow 2 Compact came out, it was always those things that went into the P-01 that allowed people to get that super sweet trigger that people loved in the Shadow 2. So that's one thing that was always amazing about the P-01. And so being able to have a double action that allows you to be a little bit more safe, and then also being able to have that single action which allows you to be able to get super crispy shots. The reset on this thing is super solid, so doubling up on shots, super sweet. It's just a testament to the classic model of gun still relevant today and not having to worry about losing a lot of things that people kind of want. Though the trigger on the P-10C still a little bit better in my opinion because it feels most like a 2011 trigger. 2011 triggers are hands down some of the best triggers that you can get, and the reason being is because it just has that super crisp straight back pull. The P-10C and the Striker Fire trigger, whenever you reset that gun, it's gonna feel like you're right back at that wall, and then you can let it go and really have another straight back pull. It being so short and so crispy, whenever you do acquire those sights and then get your shots off, you can double up no problem. Now, though both of these guns are compact guns, the recoil impulse on both of these guns are absolutely amazing. The P-01 always has been one of those guns that just felt amazing to shoot. Definitely when you get a grip on the gun, you know for a fact you can sit that thing straight and really shoot that thing straight. As the slide racks back, the barrel stays straight. It's not that more modern setup to where the barrel kind of tilts up just a little bit. It's literally stays as straight as possible. If you are training with this gun, drawing this gun, you really can get some super sweet shots and know for a fact, again, you can hold this thing straight and it's gonna shoot straight without it being super kicky or super snappy to throw off your shots or throw off your whole group in general. That being said, the ergonomics with the P-10C being a more updated modern version of the P-01, since you don't have to worry about the hammer, you can really get into the gun, choke up on the gun, get as high as you can to the bore axis, and know for a fact you can draw and get all your shots as clean as possible. The thing about the more modern guns is that the barrel does tilt up whenever it's actually in action. With having those updated ergonomics, it allows you to have that much more control. Everything that happens with the gun can feel negligible, and honestly, to where the gun feels like it's a still frame gun or even an aluminum frame gun. Double taps with the P-01 are just super fun and super easy to double up on because again, that trigger and the reset is super smooth. Though it's not as straightforward as the P-10, you definitely still can get some amazing double up shots. The P-10 does have that straightforward trigger to where, again, once that thing resets, you're right back at the wall and you can let it go a little bit faster and feel comfortable doing it. Now, with both guns having a bit of a flared magwell, reloads on both of them are a bit easy, but also it's too smooth, definitely with the 75 mags because they're a little bit slimmer. And with having the slide release on there that's a bit more extended, once you reload those shots, you can really drop that slide a bit faster than the P-10 and know for a fact you can get back to shooting your shots. The P-10 is actually super solid as well, but you can actually do that with one hand if you need to, outside of reloading and then actually dropping it with your support hand. You can literally just reload and then drop it with your main hand. If you do have some type of extended slide stop, then by all means, at that point you can train exactly the same and get right back to your shots. So again, one thing about the P-10C that allows you to still embody some of those traditional features, but have the options to have something that's a little bit more modern as well. Now, both of these guns are super reliable. I have had zero failures with either one, and honestly, the P-01 I've had for a little while now, and I've literally had the funnest time ever shooting that gun, definitely for a compact gun, because it truly keeps up with all my other bigger guns. That's one gun that if anyone has, I know for a fact they're gonna appreciate. The P-10C is definitely, again, something to have gratitude for, giving you everything that you needed from a classic gun and a more modern gun, simplifying things to where you don't have to worry about doing all this extra stuff to make sure it's actually fast and fun. All you have to do is really just take that thing out, take it to the range, and go shoot. Now, the MSRP on the CZ P-01 is $650. The MSRP on the CZ P-10C is $450. It's $200 cheaper. Optic Ready offers you all of the same stuff. So I'm not losing anything, but I'm gaining all of the same perks. For the extra $200, what I will say is that you don't have to do anything extra to make sure that you do have an amazing gun. Definitely one that's up to par with guns much more expensive. For anyone that's thinking about the Omega, of course, as you know, the Omega is discontinued. If you do find one, just know that you can make it just as good as any other P-01. If you actually find the traditional still frame P-01, then that is a whole nother ball game. So much more in making sure that that can be more up to par with something like a Shadow 2 compact. For the money that you save, all of the perks that you get out of the P-10C, I would 100% save the extra $200 and make sure that I can have an optic ready gun that again gives me all the same classic perks in a more modern setup. So if you did like this video, definitely make sure you smash the like button. If you have any comments or anything like that, definitely drop them down below. I would love to hear what you guys think about the CZ-P-01 versus the CZ-P-10C, how the price difference affects you, what other guns you think might actually fit into this for CZs or even for other manufacturers. Also, what you guys think about the generational similarities that these two guns hold. Definitely make sure to subscribe. I got mad more content coming for y'all soon. All I gotta say is stay safe, get some ammo. Till next time, y'all.